Listen, before we go any further, I need to tell you something clearly. If you've been refreshing your bank account every morning hoping to see a $2,000 stimulus payment, stop expecting it today. Because what just came out from the White House changes everything, and no one on mainstream TV is really spelling it out. So stay with me. In the last 48 hours, President Trump, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and National Economic Advisor Kevin Hassett all confirmed that the $2,000 tariff rebate checks are real. They are in the plan, but the timeline isn't what most people assumed. These aren't traditional stimulus checks. They're being described as dividend payments, money coming from tariffs collected from other countries. Trump even said publicly, anyone against tariffs is a fool, and every American making under $100,000 will receive at least $2,000. That sounds amazing. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The government doesn't have enough tariff revenue yet to send the checks out. The math is simple. Around 120 million Americans could qualify based on the income limit. Multiply that by $2,000, and you need around $240 billion ready to go. But according to the Treasury, only $130 billion has been collected so far. That means there's a $110 billion gap. And until that gap is closed, the checks cannot go out. Now here's where it gets interesting. Officials believe an additional $50 to $100 billion may come in before the end of the year. If that happens, then there would be enough money, or close to enough, to make the payments possible. But even then, there's one major roadblock. Congress must approve it. The president can't sign this into action alone. Treasury confirmed it. Kevin Hassett confirmed it. And Trump himself repeated it. We need legislation. And right now, Congress is tied up trying to finalize the budget for fiscal year 2026, a process that has already dragged on for over 40 days. Here's the real political angle no one wants to say out loud. If this stimulus bill gets pushed into summer or fall next year, it lands right before the midterm elections. And sending out $2,000 checks right before Americans vote? That's not accidental, that's strategy. Some say genius. Others say manipulation. But either way, it means one thing. The earliest most Americans will see this money is 2026, not before the holidays, and not this winter. I know that's frustrating. I know some of you needed this money months ago. I know many of you are behind on bills, rent, medication, groceries, and hearing next year feels like a punch to the gut. But listen, this isn't false hope. This isn't a rumor. This is confirmed planning. And the reason the number is $2,000 is not random. It represents the purchasing power American households lost over the last few years. So here's the big question. Who qualifies? How will the IRS decide? And what can you do now so you don't get skipped or delayed later? I'll break that down next. And trust me, this part is critical. Before we break down the eligibility rules, I need you to hear this clearly. The IRS will not randomly decide who gets this payment. There will not be a sign-up website. There will not be a form you apply through. The government is going to use your most recent tax return to determine whether you get the $2,000 or not. That means your 2024 tax filing matters more than ever. If you didn't file, if your information is outdated, or if your income changed this year, you could get delayed, underpaid, or skipped entirely. And yes, the IRS has confirmed that millions of Americans missed out on previous stimulus payments because of filing errors or outdated records. So here's the first key rule. The income limit will be under $100,000 per individual, or $200,000 per household. That number is important, because it means most retirees, most low-income workers, and most middle-class households will qualify. SSI and SSDI beneficiaries are still included, but only if the IRS can verify your payment status through Social Security records or recent tax filings. If you've moved, changed direct deposit, switched banks, or closed an account, update your information as soon as portals open. Now, here's where things get tricky. Unlike previous stimulus checks, these payments may not be distributed all at once. Treasury officials revealed a model called staggered release. That means the first wave will go to Americans with the lowest income or highest need, including SSI, SSDI, VA disability recipients, and low-income seniors. Then the second wave will cover working-class taxpayers. And finally, the remaining eligible individuals will be processed last, once additional tariff revenue is secured. In simple terms, the lower your income, the earlier your payment arrives. The higher your income, even if still under the limit, the longer you may wait. But here's the part that shocked a lot of analysts. The IRS is considering sending payments in phases tied directly to tariff revenue as it comes in, not waiting for the full amount up front. If that plan moves forward, some Americans may receive their $2,000 as early as the first quarter of 2026, while others may receive theirs months later. So the big question becomes, what could delay this further? 3 things, and they're major. First, Congress gridlock. If lawmakers cannot reach agreement on funding or attach the stimulus to the 2026 budget package, the program could stall. Second, legal challenges. Several groups argue that tariff revenue should not be used for direct payments. If lawsuits begin, expect delays. Third, inflation response from the Federal Reserve. The Fed has not publicly fought this plan, yet. But if they believe $2,000 checks could heat the economy too much, they may pressure lawmakers behind the scenes. So yes, this money is coming, but the timing is fragile. And while some channels online are making wild claims like, checks are hitting tomorrow, I'm telling you the truth. This is a process, not an overnight payout. The real question now is, will every eligible American actually receive the full $2,000, or will this end up being reduced, taxed, or offset for debt? That answer is complicated, and it's what we need to break down next. Now let's talk about the question everyone is asking. Will the full $2,000 actually reach every eligible American, or will deductions, offsets, or government rules shrink that amount before it ever hits your bank account? Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Not everyone will receive the full amount. The payment is technically labeled as a federal relief rebate, not a traditional stimulus check, and that difference matters. Because under that classification, certain government agencies are legally allowed to redirect a portion of the payment toward outstanding federal debts, including unpaid taxes, child support arrears, or government-backed loan defaults. But before anyone panics, there's a twist. SSI, SSDI, VA disability recipients, and seniors with no taxable income are expected to be protected from offsets, similar to how past stimulus checks worked. Meaning, if Social Security is your only income and you owe nothing federally, your full $2,000 is safe. For everyone else, here's the breakdown. If you owe back taxes to the IRS, your payment could be reduced. If you are behind on court-ordered child support, part of the payment may be intercepted. And if you have defaulted federal student loans, the government has not officially said whether offsets apply, meaning it's still being debated. But here's the part nobody saw coming. The Treasury is also reviewing whether these payments should be taxed as income in 2026. Yes, there's a possibility that while you receive the full amount up front, it may count toward your taxable income next year. Some lawmakers are pushing for the payment to be fully tax-exempt, just like previous stimulus checks. Others argue it should be treated like a refundable tax credit, which means technically it could still affect your taxes indirectly. Now, beyond the tax rules, there's another major factor that could affect the amount you receive: your filing status and household size. Individuals can receive up to $2,000. Joint filers can receive up to $4,000. And dependents may be eligible for an additional $500 to $1,000 depending on final policy language. That means a qualifying family of 4 could receive between $5,000 and $8,000, depending on income and dependence. But, and this is important, dependent eligibility will not be based on age alone. Adult dependents, college students still listed under parents, and disabled dependents may qualify, but only if they were listed on the most recent tax return. So if your dependent status has changed, or someone moved out, became independent, or stopped being claimed, your payment amount will reflect the last official filing. The government will not go off personal claims, verbal statements, or social media posts, only verified federal records. And that brings us to another concern: address and direct deposit accuracy. If you received past benefits through a closed bank account or outdated mailing address, your payment could be mailed as a check, which means delays, sometimes months long. So yes, the money is real. Yes, the plan is moving forward. But whether you receive it smoothly, or whether your payment gets delayed, reduced, or questioned, depends on one thing: whether your information is updated and accurate before the rollout begins. And before you think, okay, so when exactly can I expect mine? There's something you need to hear, because the timeline isn't just about logistics anymore. It's now tied to politics, and that changes everything. And here's where things take a turn, because the timeline isn't just about paperwork anymore. It's now tied directly to political strategy, negotiations, and public pressure. Behind closed doors, lawmakers are arguing over when these payments should be released, and believe it or not, the timing may have more to do with public opinion than government efficiency. Some want the checks to go out as early as January, before inflation numbers and economic reports hit the public. Others want to delay until spring, closer to election season, when voter memory is fresh and gratitude turns into votes. But there's a third faction, the one nobody talks about, pushing to delay the stimulus until after key policy votes, meaning they want to use the payment as leverage to secure support for unrelated laws, immigration funding, defense spending, and federal budget expansion. In other words, the stimulus has become a bargaining chip. Not a gift. Not a relief package. A tool. Now here's what complicates everything even further. Economists from the Federal Reserve are warning that if the payments are released too quickly, inflation could spike again. Their stance is simple. A sudden mass cash injection could destabilize the progress made in lowering inflation. But on the other side, analysts argue that not issuing the payment could be even more damaging, because millions of Americans are already on the edge of eviction, bankruptcy, or financial collapse. So the debate is no longer about, should Americans get help? Everyone agrees help is needed. The disagreement is when and under what conditions. And here's something most people don't realize. Before these payments can be issued, the government has to finalize and approve funding distribution rules with the IRS, Social Security Administration, and Treasury Department. Right now, those agencies are running parallel simulations, testing how fast they can verify eligibility, match updated banking data, and send out deposits without system overload. A leaked report claims they want the rollout in 3 waves. Wave 1, direct deposit recipients already receiving SSI, SSDI, VA benefits, or federal retirement payments. Wave 2, individuals with direct deposit history from past tax returns. Wave 3, paper check and prepaid card recipients with outdated or missing banking information. That means for some people, the deposit could arrive in 7 to 14 days after approval, while for others, it may take 6 to 10 weeks, depending on mail service and system backlog. But don't miss this part. The government is also debating whether to require a public confirmation portal, meaning recipients may need to certify identity before the payment is released. Why? Because the last stimulus waves faced record levels of fraud, including stolen identities, duplicate filings, and foreign claim attempts. So if identity verification becomes mandatory, millions of Americans may have to reconfirm personal information before receiving a single dollar. And yes, that means delays. Long delays. But with everything happening, inflation, rent spikes, debt struggles, one thing is certain, people are growing impatient. And that pressure is forcing lawmakers to move faster than planned. The question now isn't whether the stimulus is coming, it's whether the government can deliver it before trust runs out. So now we're standing at the edge of the final stage, the moment everyone's waiting for. The government has confirmed the framework, the agencies are preparing distribution systems, and lawmakers are narrowing down the release window. But here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Whether this stimulus goes out smoothly or becomes another bureaucratic disaster will depend entirely on how fast Congress stops arguing and signs the final authorization. Right now, the Treasury and IRS are ready, but they cannot press the green button until both chambers finalize the vote. And yes, there's already pressure building behind the scenes. Advocacy groups, senior coalitions, disability networks, and even state leaders are pushing one message: people cannot wait. Because while politicians debate numbers in conference halls, millions are counting dollars at kitchen tables. Rent is due. Medications are overdue. Bills are sitting unpaid. The system may move slowly, but life doesn't. That's why analysts predict a final approval window landing somewhere between late February and early April. But here's the twist: if political tensions escalate, that timeline could shift forward or backward by weeks. There's even talk that the release could be split into emergency advance payments for the most vulnerable, SSI, SSDI, VA, and low-income seniors, followed by the full rollout once the full funding clears. That would mean some people get help sooner than expected, while the rest wait for the full program to activate. And if you're wondering why everything feels so uncertain, it's because no one wants to be responsible for the fallout. If the payment is delayed, public outrage will be massive. If the payment is rushed, inflation could spike again. The government is trying to walk a tightrope with millions of lives underneath. But here's the part that matters most. No matter how long this takes, this stimulus isn't just about money. It's a test. A test of whether the government can support its people when they need it most. A test of whether promises mean something, or are just political noise. And a test of whether the system finally recognizes that many Americans aren't just struggling, they're out of time. So if you feel frustrated, confused, or tired of waiting, you're not alone. Millions are in the same position, watching the clock, watching the headlines, and wondering when relief will finally arrive. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think the government will deliver on time? Or will this be another delay buried in excuses? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just a policy update. It's your life, your money, and your future. And trust me, this story is far from over. Stay tuned, because the moment the final approval hits, I'll be here with the first update. And when the payments finally begin rolling out, you'll know before anyone else.